But on Fridays, we had what was called Jean Day, where if you brought in $1 and paid your teacher, you could wear regular clothes.
You had to pay to wear jeans?
Yeah. So every kid was so excited, like, you got your $1? Like, it was this thing. It was this, like, Friday morning ritual to gather up all the money. The teacher would come around. I remember people would leave the $1 face up on their, like, those desks that we used to have that would open, and those wooden desks.
Yeah.
The teacher would we would leave $1, and the teacher would come around and be like, okay. And the weird part is, if you sort of dressed up normally that day and then got to school and didn't have $1, they
took your clothes off in front of everybody. That's so
that
cool.
would be bad.
Hello and welcome to Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
And I'm Sam.
And today so we had a sales meeting at work, and afterwards we're kind of hanging out. The guys are loading their vans and stuff, and I looked at the one guy. I'm like, "You want to go to lunch real quick?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll go to lunch. Something fast." So around the corner from my warehouse, there's this it's like a honky tonk basically, and I live in
Is a honky tonk that's a restaurant?
Yeah, it's like a place that it's kind of like a bar with a dance floor that's kind of country western themed. I don't know the technical definition of honky tonk, but I feel like Merriam-Webster, I'm probably close.
Yeah, I mean, I've only heard I would say the only time I've heard the word honky tonk is in those pop country songs, and it's usually followed by badonkadonk, right?
That's a classic. Yeah, that's a good one.
So I get what you're saying. Place, I know. I'm picturing it, and I'm there with you. It's like a Hooters with 10-gallon hats.
Yeah, something like that. I don't feel any urge to protect this place or anything like that. So if you want to Google it, it's called True Lies. True Lies. I don't know
exactly like you would expect it to be.
Yeah,
True
it's
Lies.
El Dorado, Kansas.
El Dorado?
That's what people say. I don't know.
Okay. The road to El Dorado.
Do we have a Salina here that everybody says Salina? They don't say Arkansas River. They say Arkansas River. I don't know. But anyway,
who might argue with the local dialect?
Right. That is what it is. So I'd never been to True Lies before, but I'd heard about it. I heard it gets... It's like
it sounds like a porn shop in the middle of Pennsylvania off of I-84 like that.
That would be classier than what it actually is. But it's like a restaurant by day, and it opens at like 5 a.m. So it's open crazy hours. It's open from 5 a.m. to like the middle of the night. And at some point it turns into a very rowdy like country bar. And I've heard there's a lot of fights there and stuff like that. But I'd heard that the food was all right, and it's so close to where my warehouse is. I'm like, let's just go over to this place. Let's try it out. So I the whole time I was there, I was thinking, like, if Sam comes to visit at some point, I'm bringing him here. He will hate this place so much.
Well, we could record a podcast just from our table there.
Yeah. It's one of those places that's like, it's one thing to be like, country. There's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of charming in a way and stuff. It's one thing to be conservative. These people are like turn it up to 11. Like, I bet you whoever owns this place, the back of his truck is just loaded with bumper stickers between the rust spots.
On one end, he's got it's like an 8-foot American flag, and then on the other end of the truck, it's like a thin blue line flag, just blowing in the wind.
Oh yeah. Well, here, I'll give you some context here. So we're walking in, and on the door, taped to the front door when you walk in, it says True Lies. Sadly, due to government handouts, no one wants to work anymore. Therefore, we are short-staffed. Please be patient with the staff that did choose to come to work today, and remember to tip your server. They chose to show up to serve you. So that's on the front door when you walk in. And then
Dude, we
you
have
get
a
in.
I guess pizza place is vague enough, but people who know me and are around here will know about. But they have a Facebook page that I follow for updates.
Comet Pizza.
Yeah, and they post similar things. Not quite as heavy-handed, but it's always it's like nobody wants to work these days, but we're hiring. It's like, and then they tell you how much they pay an hour, and you're like, yeah, that's why nobody wants to work for that. They don't have to anymore. Why is that a bad thing? Can we detour on that? Why is it a bad thing where if you don't have to work for $12 an hour, why the fuck would you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, staffing's a problem everywhere.
It's
Everyone's
everywhere.
hiring. It's not because nobody wants to work. It's just the state of things right now.
There's more jobs than there are people looking. It's just sucks. It sucks, but
you know what might help with that is more open immigration. But I digress.
Yeah. Hey, they're not looking for that. Don't give them easy solutions to their questions.
Yeah, it doesn't jive with the worldview. But so we sit down and it's shocking the amount of like stimulus there is in this place.
Yeah, not surprised to know that I'm guessing that you can barely see the walls with all the paraphernalia on them.
A ton of paraphernalia, yeah. Okay, so one whole wall, it's 2 flags. One says Trump 2020, we got screwed. And the other one says Trump 2024. I don't know if that one had a catchphrase underneath. I couldn't see it from where I was.
I hope we get screwed.
They had a big InfoWars sign.
Okay.
In the thing, which is something I haven't seen at a business before.
No,
that's new.
I've never seen that at a business. That's remarkable.
They had multiple like wooden what do they call that? Where like I keep wanting to say fatigue relief of Donald Trump on the wall. Like the bar is pictures of Donald Trump on the front of the bar.
What?
And then in the background I mean, it looks old. It's a dump.
So they recently redecorated.
Yeah. It's kind of like an ongoing project, you know.
God.
It's like a Cracker Barrel for racists.
Yeah. I was going to say, it reminds me of a Cracker Barrel.
Kind of old-timey. It's sort of fun, you know.
It's like a Cracker Barrel, but with a modern racist twist.
Yeah, and so there's this thing going on in the background. There's one TV over top of the dance floor, and it's playing something. And you go into a restaurant during the day, and there's a TV on. It's normally Sports Center or something. That guy, there's that one guy that's always on ESPN every 5 seconds. I don't follow any of that, so I don't know what his name is.
What's a sport? What are sports? I can't.
Yeah, right. That's what I like about you.
Yeah, it's the one thing we have in common.
Yeah, it's like that. Maybe it's like a soap opera. Usually it's like some like milquetoast news station or something like that. This one, I noticed, like, I looked over my shoulder
I want to guess.
And I saw an election map. And I'm like, oh, that's not good.
and then you saw Mike Lindell on TV.
I wonder if Mike Lindell's a part of it. There's some sort of documentary thing, like quote unquote documentary thing going on right now. It's making the rounds in like the conservative circles. That's like, it's laying out all the evidence for how the election was stolen. And it's showing people stuffing ballot boxes and whatnot, like the mail ballots.
Yeah. No, it's, I forget the name of it. Some loser, I don't know which one, but put out a documentary compiling all the evidence. And it's basically a bunch of like weird videos of people dropping off ballots and ballot drop-off points and being like, look, they're dropping off ballots. That's too many. There's a problem. It's like insane.
Yeah. We've been hearing like nonstop news for the last 2 years about like Republican gerrymandering, how they're like redistricting Florida top to bottom. It's like, the government's corrupt. Like, of course it is. Like, do you think this only happens on one side? Whatever this is, if this is anything, this is a bipartisan strategy. I guarantee it. I don't know. But yeah, it was a lot. And it was one of those places where the wait staff is like, I say wait staff. I only talked to one person. She was rude. She was like rude from the get-go. Not very nice.
It's
I don't know.
because she's mad that she's the only one who showed up for work that day, dude. She's gonna work double
I'll tell
time.
you what. One thing I can tell you for certain about this lady, she's on board with all of this. She's a true believer.
Could you work there without it? You can't imagine someone like me working there. Impossible. You have to be fully on board, or just, I don't think anyone eats there if they're not fully on board, except for you. For some reason, you ended up there.
I went there once. Yeah,
I mean, I'll go.
The only way I'm going back is if you come to visit.
Yeah. I'll go with you. Go ironically. Yeah. Why not? I'm still hipster enough to do things ironically.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the only way to do this. But, being in and out of repair shops and stuff all day long, every day, there's a lot of really hardcore conservatives that are business owners. This was the most blatant, over-the-top, ridiculous display of identity forecasting, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. That shit's public masturbation.
Yeah, pretty much. It was pretty much what it was, yeah. So, yeah, True Lies, El Dorado, Kansas. Give it a Google. I'm sure you can see what I'm talking about.
So you don't know what was on the TV. It wasn't Newsmax. It wasn't. You don't know for sure.
All I know is that there's a documentary going around right now that's like showing how the election was stolen from Trump.
And by showing how it was stolen, it's not showing how it was stolen.
I don't know why I bet you I can Google this in 30 seconds.
Here. Yeah, you can. I just watched a piece on it with someone explaining exactly why it's just goofy as shit. It's just done poorly. Like, some of their slam dunks are like people dropping off multiple ballots, but in areas where like you can drop off other people's ballots. Like, you can drop off a bundle of ballots, it's no issue. So they'll just get like security camera footage of somebody publicly just dropping off a bunch of ballots and then walking away, and they're like, look, this is it, slam dunk. It just doesn't make sense.
2,000 Mules.
Yes.
That's what it's called. It's
insane.
Our boy Dinesh D'Souza.
That's right.
How do these people just keep... Okay, like, the first time I ever heard of Dinesh D'Souza was in, like, 2013 or something. He did a documentary called 2016 Obama's America. Do you remember this?
I don't.
That was, like, his first big hit. Glenn Beck pumped it pretty hard. That's where I heard about it, because I think I was listening to that at the time. And it was basically about how, like, we were going to be like the Soviet states of America by 2016 if Obama won the 2012
And now
election.
That's their dream. It's so funny how things change.
Freedom of speech, but, don't protest things I don't like.
And burn all the books that we think are shitty.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's so frustrating, the hypocrisy.
It's blatant. It
would be cool if just one side decided, like, you know what? Let's try being consistent on anything. Wouldn't that be amazing? I don't know what that would look like. He'd probably never win an election. Let's
exactly.
Honest.
You know what that looks like? It looks like Bernie losing an election again and again and again. That's what it looks like.
That's exactly it. Yeah. The only two people who have said the same thing for like 30 years is Bernie and Ron Paul. Both of them have been like pushed to the outskirts. I guess Ron's a little more comfortable there. Anywho, big story this week.
No, before we change stories, I just want to point out my hypocrisy. I, for the past few nights, slept on my pillow sheets.
He makes sheets?
He makes sheets, and I slept on them.
Are they all blue pinstriped?
No, these ones are like taupe, and I mean, it's like the color of his personality, just bland and
taupe,
pointless. But
comb over.
It's comb over's the new color.
You are human khakis.
I want to read that in a box of crayons. Like, I got taupe, I got beige, I got comb over.
Oh, dude, we have that box of crayons. Like, we have that box in the cupboard out there. It's like all browns.
But we had just a that's too long of a story to get into. But we had a situation where we just didn't. We don't have we ended up getting a king bed recently. We don't have a lot of like. Not, I should say recently, but we don't have a lot of spare sheets. And we had to borrow like a pair of spare sheets from my in-laws. We're like, we need a new pair of sheets, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. We got some, we get them. It's not my in-laws that buy them. It's, they actually, as much as they are, they're Newsmax watchers, but they hate Mike Lindell's product. That shows you how bad it is. They hate My Pillow. They just think it's the shittiest fucking pillow of all time. They bought them because they were like, yeah, Mike Lindell seems like a reasonable guy. Product is trash. Product is trash. And if people who watch Newsmax and are on that end of the spectrum think his product is trash, it's legitimately awful. He can't even sell it to people who are just on his side politically on everything.
Well, it's not for sleeping on, it's for kneeling on to say a prayer for America.
But my wife's grandmother will buy his stuff because she watches, whatever. She orders everything online. And if you watch like old people TV, his advertisements apparently. So she buys his stuff and gives him away as gifts. So everyone's got like My Pillow shit. And but yeah, so they gave us. They were like that was like the spare sheets that they had that we could borrow, and it was. I hate to say it, but they're honestly kind of comfortable, and that makes me feel like a traitor to this country. Everyone can make it out.
The problem with Mike Liddell is that we don't have like somebody to counterbalance him. Like what we need is like a Billy Mays that's just like a hardcore AOC progressive, just to balance Mike out. And then we could probably stomach him. We just need somebody to counterbalance him.
He's pretty unstomachable. I don't want a counterbalance because whoever the counter is would be equally as unstomachable. And I don't want to deal with two of those kinds of people. One's enough. We'll just let him. I'm glad he's like tucked away to the corners of Newsmax. I don't have to see it. We'll just sell his pillows over there, and
Mike,
I'll get his sheets from my wife's grandmother.
Check out True Lies. You'll enjoy the onion rings.
But I was morally conflicted, dude. I was like, we're putting these on our bed, and I was like, these are I hope they suck. I hope they're trash. And I was like,
you just wet the bed on purpose.
Yeah, I was like, these are actually pretty good. That's the issue we've been having. My son has wet the bed the past couple nights. It's like, so we needed like a spare just in case. It's insane, dude. I mean, he's 5, hasn't had an accident in forever. He's been out of diapers forever. And like last night he was good, but for 2 nights in a row, he woke up at like 5 a.m. because he completely soaked his. What? Twice in a row, dude. Saturday and Sunday, having your entire weekend ruined because your 5-year-old pees the bed twice at 5 o'clock in the morning is the worst.
Yeah, that sounds bad. My dog's been peeing in the cat room lately.
Your dogs I can sympathize. I feel like your dogs are always going through some shit with where they're peeing, pooping, barfing. Like it's just a thing.
We're never truly safe.
It's because your dogs are like out in the wild. You live in an area where your dogs can just roam and they just eat carcasses and shit, and they come into your house and barf it up and shit it out.
Yeah, it's true. The amount of times that like my dog will come running up with something, and I'm like, "What do you got there?" Oh, it's a severed leg.
Yeah. I'll never forget when my dog who's no longer with us, but she's a Westie, so not a big dog, came running up to us. Like, when dogs do that happy wag where like their whole body's just like, they like shimmy up to you. They're like, hey, comes up with like a dead bunny. But it's like it's a baby. It's like but it's baby. I'm talking like 6 inches, like just small, like fresh, super fresh. And, the top of the head is off completely. So it's just like the lower jaw and a tongue. It's like, and she's covered, an all white dog. So she's like, her snout and muzzle is just completely soaked in blood. And she's just like wriggles up so fucking happy. It's the best time of her life. And my wife and my mother-in-law, like we were out by my mother-in-law's pool, and they just kind of freak out. And she just looked so defeated. She like drops it. She's like, what this is the worst day of my life. I thought you guys would be so happy.
He's like Smeagol just presenting you with the
Yeah,
present.
I was like, good girl. And they're like, don't say that. And I'm like, what are you? I mean, that's her job. That's what it's like. It's bred into this dog to kill rabbits. I don't know. She was so happy. It was one of the best days of her life. So we celebrated and we ate it together raw. We shared it. We let her lick in my mouth afterwards. It was really cute.
I think that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Anyway, on to more important business. I don't even know how we got here, but
it was a fun trip. It's about to be less fun.
Depending on who you are in the scenario.
Yeah. So some real bad news came out this week for the Southern Baptist Convention. Shout out to some people in the Discord. We were talking about this earlier today, but what was it? A couple years ago? How long ago was it that like the initial accusations were made public?
The initial accusations, I think, were a couple years ago. I forget exactly, but it was at last year's Southern Baptist Convention that they voted to hire an independent third-party organization to investigate the allegations. And now we're about
allegations of broad, like widespread sexual abuse and misconduct.
Yep.
Catholic Church level stuff.
Yeah. And now we're about 3 weeks away from this year's Southern Baptist Convention. So jury's still out on how they're going to respond to it. But basically the report is that things are shit. Things are really, really shitty. A couple of things about it that are particularly notable is one is that like it was 10 years ago, dude. That's right. It just came back. 10 years ago was like when the first person really spoke up this shit. And it was like, but it wasn't
publicly.
Like, yeah. And it wasn't like they weren't crying for the whole thing to be torn down and completely demoed. They were just like, we need accountability. Like there should be a database for people who have offended sexually or whatever. Like, I'm not sure exactly what the language was around it. Like allegations, maybe not necessarily, but allegations are, look, I'm at the point where like, if someone comes forward with allegations, it's just probably fucking true with this. No one's just like, hey, someone touched my dick and I didn't want them to, and it makes the thing up. No one's doing that. Like women aren't just like, that pastor sexually assaulted me just because they want to tear him down. Like this is getting fucking ridiculous that we still have to play these fucking games where they're just like can pretend like someone would make this up to tarnish their reputation. Of all places, like the church, if someone comes out and says somebody did something to them, it probably happened. I don't why because
let's frame this real quick here.
Sure.
Because I think we're getting into the weeds a little bit, but like so basically people have been speaking up for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's just like you see in so many of these organizations. We talked about this a lot. These church groups and these giant denominations and stuff like that are a lot like a corporation in meaning that like it's a big bureaucracy.
Right.
And at some point,
presidents, CEOs, executives, it's just like a hierarchy.
And when you have an organization that big, right, with goals as big as theirs are, whether you agree with them or not, at some point, people start to look at the organization as a lot more important than individual. Individual people have brought allegations against pastors and leaders within the church, within the Southern Baptist Convention for decades, probably since its inception. I'm sure that allegations have been coming in for a long time. And church, that the convention continually pushed these people off.
Some of the cries were like they wanted the database, and they're like, well, we can't really keep track of all that. That's not really doable. And then it turns out that they actually do have a list of all the people that allegations have been made against that they just sat
think
on
about this.
Nothing with.
So like of all the people that have brought forward allegations against different pastors and stuff, there's a lot of them that have been dismissed out of hand, have been treated as liars or fakers, or as people who didn't know really what happened, or as there was some people in the article cited on NPR that like were told to keep quiet about what had happened. There were some people that out of all this group, there's some people where there's nowhere for the organization to run. This is clearly something that happened or probably happened, and there's really no denying it or pushing these people away. And for those people, what they said is like, hey, individual churches are autonomous and we can't get involved in discipline or anything like that here. The best we can do is pray. Of that small group of people that they treated their allegation, right? Of the small group of people that they treated their allegations as if they were credible, right? Which is a fraction of the whole. Those people have said, hey, can we have a list or a database? Can you guys do something to track these leaders and pastors and stuff like that have abused members of their congregation or whatever? One of the pastors, the guy was a former president of the Southern Baptist Convention. So this is leadership at the highest level. Was forced to resign over sexually assaulting another pastor's wife on a beach house vacation. So like for years and years and years, these people, the small fraction of the whole that were actually recognized as having legitimate, accusations and stuff like that, those people were continually told that like, hey, we can't get involved. We can't create a list. We can't create a database. We can't track these people. Meanwhile, we'll come to find out by this, external investigation, they do have a list. They have a very long list with hundreds and hundreds of people's names on it that they keep internally. People that were accused of all sorts of heinous things against all sorts of type of people, minors. There's one pastor that's accused, there's a guy that said that he was abused from age 12 to 15 by this youth pastor. And not only did the church not do anything, is they sat idly by while these leaders were continually shuffled to other churches in other parts of the country. Very reminiscent of the Catholic Church. It's the same exact thing. And now here's the flip side of it. And here's where I think you gotta, it's easy to just like say light a match and burn this whole thing down. During this last convention, like Sam was talking about, the group, the larger group of all these different member pastors and stuff like that voted overwhelmingly to have an external group come in and investigate these claims. So there is a huge internal push for accountability and for transparency, when it comes to sexual abuse and stuff like that. And it was ignored for years and years and years. And now it's all coming to light thanks to this investigation. I don't think anybody assumed that this was going to be a legitimate investigation that was going to turn up actual actionable items, but it is, and it was. And man, they're bringing to light some really awful things.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't think that it would be a real investigation. I think a lot of people felt similarly. I don't think people believed that they would do their due diligence. But it was an independent company. But generally, when you go in that direction, there's the assumption that you're going to hire somebody that might softball you, right? And that really doesn't seem to be the case here. I think what's going to end up being important is whether or not the SBC follows through on any of their actionable items, because they did provide a lengthy list of ways that they can do better, that they can prevent this in the future. And I don't know, man. I guess I'm skeptical that they'll like really put in the work to make sure any of them get done. Obviously a database is one of them, but I think going back to like quickly the irony of them saying, well, there's not much we can do because all of these organizations are autonomous, is they have never said that when it comes to literally anything else. If you said, I want to ordain a woman as a pastor, nope, there goes your SBC
You don't get
funding.
to be in the club anymore.
If you're an SBC pastor, you can't drink. You have to sign something saying you won't drink. And if you do, you can be knocked out. Like, they control every fucking thing. Now, of course, they're not going to find out about a lot. Like, if you want to drink in the privacy of your own home, that's not obviously going to come back to get you. But you sign something that's pretty lengthy that says specifically what you can and can't do when it comes to the way you conduct yourself publicly. And I guess the difference is drinking's on there, but sexual assault just isn't mentioned. So it's probably not as big of a deal. But no, but I do have to imagine that it talks about sexual conduct and things like that. Like, if a pastor cheated on their wife, I'm sure they'd have more to say about it than if a pastor molested a 12-year-old. And then they can't do anything about it. And that's what's so fucking sick about this is like, it's very obvious that like they could have done something from the start, and that playing this whole like the autonomy card, it's like states' rights bullshit is what that made me think of.
It's like protect the organization at all costs. Like this is going to hurt the organization.
And we've talked about that so much because there's that idea that like the mission outweighs the bad things that could derail it. Well, you're going to hurt the gospel. Yeah.
No, this hurts the gospel.
Yeah, you hurt the gospel. Yeah, exactly.
This hurts the gospel. You thinking you can run from this stuff forever and then having it explode in your face. That's what hurts your testimony, not Pastor Terry having a margarita in Key West on vacation, posting a picture on Facebook. And that's what's so frustrating about so much of this stuff is just like the amount of emphasis that is put on things that are so meaningless and insignificant. While this is, it is the quintessential example of remove the plank from your own eye before you try to take a sliver out of your neighbor's. And it's just gross. I think the only thing, like the only part of this story that softens it at all is the fact that like the overwhelming majority of the members voted for this independent investigation, which that's a thing that I think is worth giving them some credit for.
Yeah, I think it is. There's something, I think it's Russell Moore was a previous president who left because of some of the, like all the bullshit that was going on. He actually had a really, not to necessarily, like he was the president of the SBC for a while. So for him to be able to like,
this is the guy that left because of the sexual assault. Like this literal topic is why he left. He was the head of their public policy. So he wasn't the president of the organization, but he was the head of their public policy division or something like that. And his blurb in the NPR article, I think it really paints a picture. Here's the quote. He says, so this is Russell Moore, who formerly headed the SBC's public policy wing, but left the denomination. So he left the denomination as a whole after accusing top executive committee leaders of stalling efforts to address the sex abuse crisis. So this is something that's been going on for a while, and it's not something that like all of a sudden the lid's been blown off. Like this has been an internal struggle for a long time, and there's a lot of people within that group that have just turned a blind eye to it or have chosen to let it keep going on by not doing anything about it. But he says, Moore says, crisis is too small a word. It's an apocalypse. He says, as dark a view as I had of the SPC Executive Committee, the investigation uncovers a reality far more evil and systematic than I imagined.
Yeah. He ends up, he had a couple other really good quotes regarding it and the way that they will, well, similarly, just the irony of like, oh, we can't do anything about this, but, we'll go ahead and make a big deal about what women wear on television or what women wear to church in a way. Oh, that hurts your witness. But then they'll just completely pretend like there's no issues going on. It just shows like the rot in the soul of BC. Now, some of the things that the report recommends to form like as solutions, we should probably wrap this up, but as form an independent commission and later establish a permanent administrative entity to oversee comprehensive long-term reforms concerning sexual abuse and related misconduct within the SBC, create and maintain an offender information system to alert the community to known offenders, provide a comprehensive resource toolbox, including protocols, training, education, practical information. Here's a big one that's such a fucking duh that it makes me sick that someone even has to write it down in an independent report. Restrict the use of non-disclosure agreements and civil settlements, which bind survivors to confidentiality in sexual abuse matters unless requested by the survivor. It's like, come on. Like, the church handing out NDAs like that is really fucking egregious. That's one of the big ones. I mean, that's what everyone defaults to. Mars Hill did that shit. Like, obviously corporations do it all the time. And the fact that we like NDA is a thing is kind of mind-boggling. Like we can legally force you into silence is so strange, but a church especially defaulting to an NDA to not have to deal with the legal repercussions or the fallout for them. Pretty gross. So look, jury's out on whether or not they're going to implement any of this shit. I'm interested to see how they react to this. It was like a 300-page report. I'm interested to see how they react to it at this year's Southern Baptist Convention. We'll see if any one of them, or the majority at least, when it comes to voting, has, I don't know, any integrity at all and will actually follow through with any of the recommendations here.
Well, I'll tell you,
my hopes aren't super high.
The entire executive committee should be gone.
Yeah.
Not a single person who's been on that board throughout this crisis should be there when this is all done. It's the same as like when we talked about Liberty after all the scandals and stuff like that. You know, that if there's anyone left on that leadership committee at the end of all this, then they're not taking this seriously enough to I mean, especially to remain a tax-exempt organization, you know?
Oh, I know. I think that's what people find really upsetting, too, is that they can continue to maintain that despite their failures to report such awful things. I want to say the report, it's weird because the way that the vote in favor of the independent investigation worked was like, I want to say there was a couple of executives that the majority of this falls on that handled these kind of cover-ups and stuff like that. I feel like there's kind of like this desire for people to try to like get out from underneath it, though. Like even if you could hang it on a couple and the rest were like, things seem weird, we should vote about this. Like, you're implicated. You've been at the top for too long. Everyone like the trust is completely eroded. It's been eroded, but now it's especially eroded. And you're right. I mean, the only path forward, even if there are people in the executive board who are completely blameless and guilt-free from all of it, who gives a fuck? Like, you got to clean house.
If they haven't been an outspoken voice throughout the process here, then they need to go.
Yeah.
If you care anything about your quote-unquote testimony, reestablishing trust with your denominational members and things like that, stop protecting those people and get rid of them. And if they willfully ignored, the requests of people who have leveled accusations at leaders and stuff, like if they were part of the group that shuffled around these different pastors who were accused of molestation and abuse, they need to face criminal charges. Regardless of what it makes the SBC look like, take these people out and hit them with the full extent of the law. Or else, you're just going to be another corrupt organization that has no credibility with the outside world.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that, they have to understand, like, I just read earlier today that 3 million Southern Baptists have left the denomination in the past 15 years, and more than 1 million of those have been in the last year. So you're hemorrhaging
33%.
You're fucking hemorrhaging people because of the way you're running your shit. So get the fuck out of your own way. If you actually care, like, that's the irony. We care about the gospel, therefore we can't deal with this. Otherwise, people will be like, well, then it's bad. Yeah, it's fucking bad. Own it, because everyone knows it's rotten anyway. That's why you've lost so many people. And if you want to clean it up, like, I'll never consider it to be a viable option for me. I'll probably never consider it to really be important at all. I think most people would be better off leaving it. I don't think the Southern Baptist Convention carries a lot of weight, and I think their theology is backwards. But you could do that in a way that doesn't fucking hurt people so bad, including the people who are leaving it in droves. Those people are hurt too for different reasons. I don't know. That's just, it's getting mind-boggling that like that the way they dig their heels in and say, we can't handle our problems because it'll make more people leave. Just the numbers don't check out on that.
Not at all.
Their responses to everything for the past 15 years has been constant leaving. So anyway,
tidy up your house, scumbags.
We should introduce our guest. Our guest this week is Kevin Klein. Kevin is frontman for an awesome band called Valleyheart. I speak very highly of them. in this conversation we have, so we don't need to get too much into it here. They're a tooth and nail band. They have a new record coming out on June 3rd. They also, I don't know, I don't think a lot of our listeners live in Massachusetts, but they are a Massachusetts band. And if you are in the area, I think they're still selling tickets to an album release party on June 3rd in Salem, Massachusetts. So if that sounds interesting to you, I want to be there very badly. I would be there, but my foster son's high school graduation is that night. So I suppose I'll go to that instead of the Valleyheart album release show, but should say release. I think it's a listening party, not a show. But they'll also be hitting the road soon to promote and tour the new album. So keep an eye out for them. Like, definitely check them out on Spotify. It's really good shit. I think our listeners, especially, he just hits on a lot of the shit that we've all gone through when it comes to losing, shifting, changing your faith, whatever that looks like. I think you'll find something that resonates with you, all to the sound of some really fantastic music. So without further ado, our conversation with Kevin Klein. Hey everybody, we're back with our guest, Kevin. Kevin, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Kevin, I want to start us off with a little bit of an icebreaker because we have a mutual friend, as we've talked about, and he's actually been on this podcast before. So for the listeners, Jesse O'Neill, my childhood friend, you guys used to play, you guys as bands, you were in a metal band for a while. I don't know for how long, but you guys used to play shows together, and he's brought up this show that he played a couple of times that was really an interesting experience, and I only just found out that I guess your band was a part of that. So you guys played a homeschool graduation. Do you remember this?
Did he tell you the state?
He didn't. I wish he was on.
He didn't. Now, okay, I was gonna say.
Do you play a lot of homeschool graduations?
Yes, at least 3 a year. So this is kind of hard to track. No, I'm kidding.
No!
I'm kidding. I think I remember. I think it was in Connecticut. I think it was in Bristol, Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken. Did he give you any more context or information?
I mean, the context was that like there was nobody there, and the people who
we did. That happened a lot. So there was a lot of that. So that's not really narrowing anything down. I'm sorry.
Maybe it was parents and kids who didn't belong there, kids who would not necessarily find themselves gravitating towards the metal scene.
I think it was for this family that, they were big fans of the heavy stuff and the Christian heavy stuff. I think I got it down. Yeah, that's so funny that he remembered that. I'll need to reach out to him and ask him more about it because that is too funny. Man, that was a time in life.
He talks. He's talked a good bit about playing just every band. I swear, if you're just in the heavy music scene and it's like playing a show for other bands and a couple other people. But homeschoolers are a different breed. I was homeschooled, and I had gone to homeschool graduations, and I know what those are like, and I know that metal bands don't usually belong.
No. I mean, there was like you're saying, a lot of shows like that. Not lots of people, but just weird shows because we were sort of that, Christian metal band. We would play churches sometimes and youth events that had just no business of having a heavier band on there. Played a deli once.
Deli?
Yeah, played a deli. Played a bunch of just interesting youth groups. Yeah, lots of variety in that time of life. It's so funny thinking back on it. I'm sure Jesse has all these stories too, but there's that funny video I'm sure you guys have seen, but it's like the band playing at Denny's, the hardcore band. Y'all seen
I don't think I have seen that.
Oh wow, that's like iconic. It's just this band, this like local hardcore band. It's like, what the fuck is up, Denny's? And it's just like they're in a Denny's and they're playing a show, and there's like people around them. It's like a real show that someone just took on like their iPhone or something. And it's one of the most amazing videos because it really captures a time in life for me. It's like, I know that feeling. I know the feeling of pulling up to a place and being like, okay, we're playing at Denny's tonight, or like some weird place in the middle of nowhere. All right, let's give it our all.
Yeah, it's all like you pull up and you never know it. It's also funny because when you never know what to expect, you don't really know what you're looking for. You're just like, did we pass it? Or this is it. We're here now.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yep.
This can't be it because there's no cars here.
Been lots of that in my life, my friend.
All right, Perkins, this song's called Moon's Over My Hammy.
There you go. There you go.
So, Kevin, why don't you, I want to hear a little bit about your life and how you grew up. I know you grew up in my area, I think, Massachusetts. Did you grow up in Massachusetts?
So I was born in New York and moved to Massachusetts when I was around 9 years old. So most of my life in Massachusetts.
Cool.
Yeah.
I feel like obviously there's plenty of people who grow up in Massachusetts, but I feel like we haven't talked. Tons of people have grown up near you, Casey, like people from your area. I feel like that happens
I feel like exactly the opposite.
What? Our guest? I feel like at least
I feel like people from
Massachusetts
never stop jabbering about it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
All right. Like I don't
personal now.
Like everybody in our dorm was from Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, so you two went to school together. Is that how you met?
Yeah, we met at Liberty University. On the
dorm. Big LU.
Yeah, but yeah, we did have a lot of Mass kids on our dorm, and I didn't actually know I knew a couple of them ahead of time, but I was like, just kept meeting people from Massachusetts. So I'm like, how are all of you guys showing up at Liberty University?
Well, I'm sure Liberty is a big school, but what year did you two graduate or college?
I graduated in 09.
09. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, I took me a little bit of time to get through it. I think I was 2011, I think.
Okay. So yeah, you guys are a little older than my group because I had some people I know down at Liberty too, but a little later.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a big
if
school,
you're a Christian, you know people who went to first.
Exactly. It's a definite rule.
But yeah, so you grew up. So what was your kind of background? Your church background?
Yeah. So I grew up in New York as a young child, and then moved to Massachusetts. Church background. Well, my mom is a Christian, and sort of tied to her faith very strongly. My dad was sort of not so much was the secular one at the time, the one we had to say, as they say. So my mom raised me going to church pretty young, and she's Brazilian, so we went to Brazilian church, actually. It was my first church experience.
Okay.
I was like a very young child. I remember running around in Queens, New York, actually, running around and singing at the church. I would do there was solos you would do as like a 4-year-old, and I would sing at the church and run around at the church, and then got involved in kids church and then eventually youth group in high school, which were definitely some of the most formative years, and made a lot of friends through that, made some of probably what is now my core friend group through that, and it's morphed and melded, but met a lot of people, met the band that I was in that played with Jesse's band and the Christian metalcore band. Met those guys in high school at youth group and started touring when I was 14 and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, it was freshman or sophomore, 14 or 15. It was sophomore year of high school, and we hit the road in the summer. And then we kind of just did a lot of those sort of regional tours, and that was sort of our church for a while too. If we're talking church history, just doing that. Am I going too far? Did you just want?
You're fine. No, you're fine. I'm actually going to cut in though, because the whole touring at 15 thing is kind of wild to me. I feel like that's what 15-year-olds talk about wanting. Guessing someone in your group had a driver's license that was able to make that.
Yeah, I was always the younger one. So I sort of hitched on and then eventually got my license, started driving too.
I had a brief stint in a band, but I'm not, there's no reason that should have lasted longer than it did. Probably shouldn't have lasted, but I had a van. So that was that might've been part of the reason that kept me around. People with vans go far in that world.
It's currency, man.
Man, so did your dad ever get into church, or did he always kind of hold it at arm's length?
Held it pretty much at arm's length. It's funny, we still talk. I have a great relationship with both my parents today and talk to them about faith and church stuff all the time. My mom, who is not who's still a Christian but not going to church anymore, which has been a very interesting thing. Something I never thought I'd see. But my dad always kind of held it at arm's length, and I mean, we were pretty hardcore, sort of the church that I'd grown up in, sort of evangelical church, AG, Assemblies of God. It was pretty charismatic, pretty intense, pretty identity driven. From the youth group phase up, and even before that with kids church and all that stuff, and I was not indoctrinated, but I was heavily, indoctrinated. But this sort of heavy sense of this is my faith. It wasn't just like, oh, I go to church on Easter and Christmas. It was like I was reading the Bible when I was in middle school and praying and sort of leading worship at chapel and all this stuff. So my dad always just kind of was like, hey, like it's fine, but it's just not my thing. Like my family's Catholic, like one of those guys, just like, yeah, I'm chill. Like I don't really want to go to church. So, we talk now about some crazy stories and like sort of the tensions that brought within my dad and I, sort of like being this judgmental little kid who, like, at the time thought if you listen to unchristian, like, go to hell, and all this crazy stuff that gets into your brain. And my dad just being like, all right, Kev, all right, and him just like not knowing how to deal with that. Right. And it's crazy. Yeah. Even my mom and I talking about that stuff, about how crazy like some of the things we believed and we did and pastors we listened to, and how whether you fall on the Christian side or not now, both of my parents were like, that shit was crazy.
Assemblies of God comes up a lot on this show. I feel like I didn't really know anything about them 2 years ago. And now like a significant portion of people that we've talked to have been Assemblies of God. And it seems like it tends to lean charismatic fundamentalist, like pretty much 100% of the time.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for the whole branch there, but I know specifically for our group, it wasn't like crazy stuff, but it was just, the little subtle things. It's the modesty stuff. It's the culture around purity and all that subtle stuff that you're not like hit on the face with, but through the years you're like, you just start sort of reminiscing and thinking. And I often wonder, I mean, I'm not to just bash on the AG. I mean, I think that every institution has a level of that. Like even thinking about my school, like where I went to school, it was like, there's just some weird stuff that happened that I'm like, as an adult now, you're just like, wait a minute, that probably wasn't the best thing.
Yeah. Were you at a Christian school?
I was, yeah, I was. But it wasn't like Christian related. It was just like, we had a uniform. I just was having a conversation with a friend about this and just thinking about how wild this was. We had uniform Monday through Thursday at my school, and we would wear gym clothes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Monday and Wednesdays it would be regular sort of button-up collar with dress pants clothes. This is elementary school and middle school. But on Fridays we had what was called Jean Day, where if you brought in $1 and paid your teacher, you could wear regular clothes.
You had to pay to wear jeans?
Yeah. So every kid was so excited, like, you got your $1? Like, it was this thing. It was this, like, Friday morning ritual to gather up all the money. The teacher would come around. I remember people would leave the $1 face up on their, like, those desks that we used to have that would open, and those wooden desks.
Yeah.
The teacher would we would leave $1, and the teacher would come around and be like, okay. And the weird part is, if you sort of dressed up normally that day and then got to school and didn't have $1, they took
your clothes off in front of everybody. That's so
that
cool.
would be bad. Yeah, no, you had to call your parents and they had to come bring your uniform. Like I remember that happened to a girl once, and now just thinking of like the humiliation and just the logistics of that is just
yeah.
It's $1
in school. It's annoying when I have to pick up my kids because they got sick at school. Never mind.
Yeah,
like that.
I know $1. It's like, come on. So looking back on that, it's like that's some sort of mind trick going on there. That's like we control you. We allow you to sort of break out of the mold. It's like controlled chaos theory. I've gone into like deep Freudian theory with my friends about this situation. It's pretty weird.
They don't take IOUs there, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
we've talked a lot about like because I went to Christian school pretty much my whole undergrad, whatever. But it's so weird, like the dynamics that form in those environments, because we always say that like when nobody's really doing anything bad, like very small things get amplified big time to the point where like nobody's drinking, nobody's even really swearing or something, but someone just like continually doesn't tuck in their shirt like they're supposed to, and all of a sudden like their mom's in the principal's office and they're having like a talk about it.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. It was exactly that. It's now looking back, you're like, this is nominal levels of offenses. What are we doing here?
What's like one of the dumbest things that you remember like getting in trouble for yourself or somebody else?
Well, I have a specific memory, but it's not about me, but it was about one of my good friends in middle school, and it's a really funny story actually. So every Friday, Jean Day, you could wear normal clothes, and there's this kid. His name is Jordan. I don't think he'll mind me saying his name, but if he does, I'll say there's this other person, my friend. He every Friday he would wear. We all wear normal clothes, but he was super into goth and metal and these bands like Metallica and Megadeth, and was super into like metal stuff. And he was always sort of the rebel of the school. And every Friday we weren't allowed to wear shirts that had any graphics, let alone names or words or bands or anything like that. It was supposed to be a sort of a plain shirt. That was another thing. No graphics could be on it. But he would come in every Friday with like a Metallica t-shirt or a Slipknot. It was like that level of stuff. Yeah. And I remember he would get called to the principal's office every Friday, and he just didn't care. He's like, well, and his mom didn't care too. His mom was so cool. I remember she was just one of those teachers that would like fight with the principal, like, what is wrong with you? Like, this is messed up. And she had her son in there for different reasons, but she was like, this is crazy. And he would just defy the rules every time. And then one time I remember he got called in and he was wearing a Lamb of God t-shirt. And I was like, uh-oh, like, Jordan, this is it, man. You're done. This is the end for you. And he went to the principal's office, and I remember coming back and he had this big smile on his face. So what happened? Did you get expelled, suspended? He's like, no, dude. She looked at my shirt and she said, Lamb of God. Jordan, that's beautiful. I'm really glad that you're taking this path in life. And she was completely fooled by the band name. It was sort of a mild shirt, so it could have gone both ways. It was sort of, ambiguous, and she totally thought it was a Christian band or Christian t-shirt, and we just laughed about it for the whole period. I'll never forget that story.
That's so good. I feel like we were recently talking about band names that could pass for Christian names, and Lamb of God did
Mike
come
Valdez.
Up. Yeah, and I remember Lamb of God the first time I heard it, thinking like, because most of my introduction to heavy music was through Christian music, but I was like,
okay.
But then the people I heard it from weren't Christians, and then they weren't in that scene at all. So I just remember feeling I don't want to be the guy who asks. I don't want to be like, oh, is this a Christian band? Because then you look like the guy who only I don't know. It was like, I don't want to be that person.
Gotcha.
And that one sat in the back of my mind for like 3 or 4 weeks before I finally got confirmation.
It's like Children of Bodom. Do you guys know that band?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's, Bodom sounds like something that could come out of Leviticus, You're just like Children of Bodom. I'm like, yeah, I missed that chapter, but it's in there,
Okay, how big was your school?
When I first entered the school in second grade, there were, I think, 41 kids in my class. By the time I had graduated eighth grade, because I stayed there from second grade to eighth grade, the school had deteriorated into, my class was now 4 kids. And actually my last year was the last year of the school.
Wow.
Yeah, now it was a school and a church. Now it's just the church, and the church is still there. The school is long gone because they realized it didn't make money and just shut it down. And there was a whole situation weirdness with that. But yeah, it deteriorated pretty quickly throughout those years, but small, I would say.
I'm going to hand it to him for holding out to 4 kids. That's impressive.
Yeah, there's real resilience or stubbornness there. I don't know what it is, but there's something there.
No, is it like a traditional type of curriculum where you went to classes and stuff, or did you do some sort of like homeschooling as a group sort of thing?
It was pretty traditional class stuff. There was no homeschooling aspect, but I remember as an elementary school, and I don't even know if this is normal across all schools because I only have my experience, but we would have one teacher for all subjects. That's pretty standard, right?
Yeah, I was in Christian school I only was in it through second grade, but that was always the case for me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, nothing too out of the ordinary there. But I will say, when it got to 8th grade, stuff started getting weird because our computer teacher, who didn't really have a degree in anything else, I think, suddenly, because teachers started leaving in protest because the school was closing all of a sudden, our computer teacher suddenly became our math and science teacher, and really had no idea. One of those things, looking back, had no idea what the guy was doing. I'd be like, hey, Mr. McNeil, if X is equal to 7 or, whatever, what's the log of 10? I don't make so sense, but, and you'd be like, great question. Let's look at it together. And that was the answer to every question, was let's look at the textbook. I feel bad for that guy, because he was just probably thrown into a shitty situation and just like, all right, I guess I have to do this. But it got a little weird there for sure.
It's like, look, kids, it's either a sine, a cosine, or hypotenuse.
Tangent?
Here's a great way to transition into a tangent here.
I always think it's weird thinking of how, because when you're a kid, you feel like your teachers are kind of old, and now that I'm presuming you're in your 30s or around that, it's like
27.
Really? I don't think you necessarily look older than 27. Didn't mean to be offensive, but
you're good. I do
just
look older.
Making guesses here. But it is weird to think back and be like knowing that our teachers were around our age, and it's like, or some of them, and you're like, you were normal people, but they didn't seem it. And thinking back on how they would have felt or what their experiences would have been. I had this teacher who was a nightmare. I don't think I've told you. She was terrifying, and kids were afraid to do anything. Like, if you yawned too loud, she would just yell at you and berate you in front of the rest of the class. And one kid, he was the one who would typically act up. His name was Gary, and he did have a fear of her. But then he was also a brat. So it was like one of those kids that couldn't help it, but then ended up he was miserable in that because he would always get yelled at. But one day he really had to go to the bathroom, and he was too afraid to raise his hand to ask the teacher if he could use the bathroom. And he just sat at his desk and sat in it for a while before the teacher, the teacher saw him fucking crying in his chair with his head down. And that's when she realized he peed his pants, and she had to call his mom.
No.
And it was
How did she react to it?
Oh, she was mad at him for doing it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. She was truly an awful person.
Wow. Yeah. There's some weird, it's definitely trippy to think about the age thing. That stuff trips me up all the time. I think about it way too often, just sort of comparatively. Oh, my mom was this age. She was my age when this happened.
Yeah.
Stuff's wild. It's wild.
I know. You're like, oh, they were my age. Like, my parents were younger than me when they had me. Like, my kids are 6 and 5, and when I was around 5, my parents were around my age, and it's just like, oh, that is weird to think about, because I feel so much different than how I perceive my parents. Definitely, you never really know. Like, there was probably so much shit going on in their heads and their lives and in their minds that you just
it's so
you'll
true.
you'll never understand it.
It's so true, and I think I've had more and more grace for my parents as I've gotten older, because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm nearing in on the age that they would have had me or something like this. And you're thinking, I have so much stuff going on in my head, and I'm still a mess, and learning and growing and doing all this stuff. It's like, they're just people. Of course that's obvious, but there's always this sense of sort of them having it figured out and down. And I don't know, I think as you get older, you're like, there's a lot more just, you guys did your best.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys did your best thing.
Who was in charge of your school? Was it a pastor, or was it an actual qualified person for running a school? Or
well, all right, I'm going to go into the bureaucracy of it all. So it was a church, and there was a pastor who had his wife and family, but the church side was pretty separate. But it was the school side was funded by the church side. So the pastor was sort of this elusive figure that would stop in every once in a while. We're like, ooh, Mr. Collins, but he wasn't around. There was a whole sort of system of, there was a principal, there was a vice principal, there was I don't even know, there was the office with your secretary and all this stuff. So there was a pretty intricate system there. But it was all, again, looking back, my mom and I were just talking about this. It was all shady in the sense of, I don't know. It wasn't I feel like it was people that didn't have the right credentials to be in the positions they were in, just because it was a really small private school. Not a lot of eyes on it. No government eyes on it, at least. Interesting stuff. But there was a sort of a
that stuff's always interesting to me, because I mean, there was one qualified teacher at my school,
Okay.
and he was great, but the rest of them were just like volunteer parents.
Right.
And then they had a lady with with like some education background and stuff, and I think she was a pretty competent lady, but uh, there just wasn't a lot of infrastructure there or like clear designation of power and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like dress code was just a problem all the time at our school because it wasn't clearly defined, so it was kind of at the whims of whoever wanted to make a big deal out of something or didn't out of this. And it wasn't as bad for the guys, but like for the girls, it was bad.
Yeah.
Because it was like
Bummer.
if you irritated the person in charge, they tend to pick apart your dress and your shirt length and your how tight your pants are and stuff. And I remember like we had one big event a year that was like the senior banquet where everybody dressed formal and stuff. And the girls would all have to bring their dresses in and try them on for the leadership person at the time.
Chaperone.
Exactly. And like
Yeah.
they would decide if the dress was like appropriate or not.
Right.
And I remember like all of the girls, like basically any of the girls that tended to be in her crosshairs, they would all have to wear like a big shawl over top of their dress. And then all the rest of them could kind of wear whatever they wanted to. It was just always a weird like point of contention within that environment because there wasn't like very clear set out rules on like, look, you guys wear khaki pants, you wear blue or red polo shirt, blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, no, there was a lot of that. My friend went to Christian college, one of my best friends, and they had the quarter trick for guys. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but
the quarter trick?
The quarter trick, yeah, it was for guys and girls, I think. Maybe not for girls, maybe, I don't know. But it was the era of skinny jeans. It was the scene heavy music era for, all the guys. We were wearing as tight jeans as we could. And the trick was if you can get a quarter down your pants and it hits the ground, you're in good shape. But this is a real thing at a really qualified seminary and Bible college.
Wait, did the person conducting the survey, did they sniff the quarter afterwards?
That would be freaky. I don't know, but I never went to the school. So, but there were people who were vouching that this is true, and and you would get a fine if it got stuck in there. You get like a $50 fine.
Not only did they get fined, that person who put it down there had to fish it out, and that was the
right. So in reality, they owe $49.95 if you ask me. Or I should say $75.
You want to see? You got to pay for a full month of OnlyFans subscription for me. Okay?
There you go.
I wanted while we're talking about wearing like jeans and a polo and like skinny jeans and a polo at Christian college. I just want to give a huge shout out to August Burns Red for making that cool at that time, making it not so terrible.
Yeah, definitely used to love that band.
That was their deal. They all wore polos.
They were like the American Eagle scene kids.
Yep.
Oh yeah. There was, oh my goodness, I have pictures on end of that was the world we were in at that time. Everything.
So growing up with your dad not going, you mentioned there being like a tension there, not going to church, and you kind of saying stuff to him. Was that like a normal thing? Were you trying to get did you feel that pressure to like get your dad into church? Did you talk to your mom about it? Like, how do you think that affected you when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, immensely. Actually, last Father's Day, my dad and I had a 3-hour talk about this.
I think everyone's the takeaway from this conversation, dude, for everyone listening is going to be that it's pretty fucking cool that you can just talk to your parents about this shit.
Yeah. And I'll say I know it's a privilege. I am so grateful for it because I know that not everyone has that opportunity, and not everyone's parents or themselves are in a place where they can sort of have conversations that move forward, that don't just hit a wall of like, well, we just disagree, or I don't love you, or up until I don't accept you. Like people, with different sexual preferences, there's a lot of stuff that you can't talk about with your parents. So I feel really grateful that when it comes to faith stuff, I'm still able to. But yeah, talking to my dad about it was interesting because it was intense. It was really intense. I mean, I was pretty, I was your little evangelist, I wanted to convert every and anyone that I was, indoctrinated in that sense of the world is black and white. Like you're either saved or you're not. Like you're either on God's side or you're not. Like you need to be saved.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember having anxiety as a little kid because I, watched Left Behind, right? That movie with Kirk Cameron, and those scenes would impact me so strongly because in my mind I was like, well, my mom and I are going to be okay. Like we're the ones that the clothes are left behind. If people are listening, they don't know what we're referencing. This is a movie that essentially plays out in a narrative, the rapture, right? Where it's like people get taken back into heaven and the people who aren't Christian or weren't true Christians get left behind and sort of deal with the havoc of the Antichrist and of the world. It's pretty crazy shit.
And at that point, you definitely can pass the quarter test.
Yes, exactly. So I had this heavy burden. I mean, like a burden that no one should hold, let alone a kid, of you need to save your dad from eternal damnation, like your dad's going to burn. And I would have dreams of my dad burning and being in hell and just like such crazy stuff. And thinking I'm okay, I'm saved. And, sort of putting that burden on my dad, he loves me, loves me, but it was a lot for him. And I think we talk about it now. And there's no like hard feelings. He was just like, he's like, I understand you were brainwashed. Like you were in that headspace. And I was like, yeah, I was. I mean, my dad wanted to get a tattoo for the longest time. And I specifically remember telling him as a kid, Dad, if you get a tattoo, you're going to burn it.
Wow.
And now, I have so many tattoos and I know. So I remember him saying, Kev, listen, I just want a tattoo that has he wanted like my name on, like something about me. It was like the sweetest thing. And I was like, nope, like you can't mark your body. And he's like, one day you're going to grow up and you're going to get tattoos of your own. And it's going to be too late for me to get tattoos. And I said, Dad, that's never going to happen. So on my 18th birthday, when I got a tattoo, he was pretty upset / sort of.
He should have just got one with you.
Well, that's what I said. I said, Dad, it's not too late. And now he's all, no, I'm too old. It's past the time. I think he's just scared. I think it's just his excuse. But even till this day, I'm like, Dad, it's Father's Day. It's your birthday. Let's go get a tattoo. Let's go. Every occasion, I'm like, it's time to get a tattoo together to like make up for it. I'll pay for it. He's like, no, I'm too old. I can't do it now. And so it's this ongoing joke we have. But, if you look behind the curtain of the joke, it's a pretty intense thing there that you sort of see the world in that way,
Yeah, dude, it sounds like your dad was in an interesting spot. Like he wasn't trying to blow up you or your mom's spot and trying to let you guys do you, but also do him. And I think that sounds it sounds cool. Like for him, like to have that patience with it.
Yeah.
But that must've been so complicated and difficult for him.
Yeah, no, for sure. And now that, I don't go to church or can even consider myself a Christian anymore the traditional way or whatever. We have such interesting talks about it. And like, I don't know if this is legal to say on a federal podcast, but can I talk about smoking weed or is that weird?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We talk about drugs.
I live in Kansas, so I'll just pretend not to hear any of this.
Okay, cool. There was a few years back where we smoked weed together, like on his birthday, and like watched a movie and kicked it and like talked about this stuff. And it was just such a surreal experience of like, wow, like if you would have told younger him that this situation would happen, there's no living soul that would believe you. But, it's like the irony of it all. It's like, here we are like laughing about these things, these very serious sort of traumatic things like smoking. It's funny. And again, I'm grateful to like have that sort of lighthearted flexibility around my dad.
Yeah.
Or maybe the devil won.
Or maybe the devil won. And, that's a joke, right? But I think after leaving the church and sort of whatever, that idea of like two paths, right? One is God's path for your life and one is the devil's path and the wrong path. That has sort of haunted me even after removing the theology and like whatever and the culture and not going to church and all that stuff. There's still this like thing I struggle with a lot. And I've talked to a lot of people that sort of grew up in the church and curious what you guys have to say too, of this like dual path, like right and wrong, back and forth thing that happens in my head when certain situations arise or when I'm finding myself in a certain place. And even this, like when I get too high and I get all paranoid and stuff, as sometimes you do, which why I don't really smoke anymore at all. But when I did, the reoccurring paranoid thought I would have is like, you're on, like, sort of that joke you just made, like, you're on the wrong path. And that stuff's weird, you know?
What particular things, when you're like you're in that headspace, what are the particular things that you look at as like, if this is a right versus wrong thing, this is the stuff in my life that's definitely a like, is there specific things that you're like, this could be an issue if it is the way that I was taught it was?
No, it's not a specific thing. It's sort of like almost like your butterfly effect situation where it's like one deviation in the road has sort of exponentially led to a different life, which is ridiculous because life itself is this sort of beaming, beautiful, uncontrollable thing that just happens, right? There's no, I mean, whether you believe in sort of things being mapped out or not, I guess we'll defer your answer, but deter your answer. But there's just this sense of like, oh, this is not the right path, which I don't believe in my right mind, but it's this sort of in my body thing that happens that it sort of, that thought tempts me sometimes and like gets me in a really weird headspace. And I've only recently figured out that that definitely has to do with my upbringing in the church in like a very weird way of like dualistic paths, God's will, your will, and sort of constantly putting into different baskets, like which is which, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely some things that, like, even if the implications of it are far from true, there are aspects of that that did turn out to be the way that we were taught they were in some ways. Like, for instance, you're kind of taught that, like, you need to be in church and you need to be around other Christians and surround yourself with your brothers and sisters in Christ and stuff like that. And if you're not constantly being nourished spiritually in a church setting or in, like, in spiritual ways, that, like, you'll drift from the Lord. And that is absolutely true. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it was good for me, but it really was like my proximity to other Christians directly influenced like how concerned I was about keeping my mind in check on what I thought. It was only after I like had some distance between myself and church people and church places and all of that where I really started to like be honest with myself about how much I actually believed and what actually mattered to me, as opposed to like what I continually paid lip service to and hoped was something that mattered to me.
So you're saying that community helped you or it sort of harmed you in knowing what you really believed?
I think I think regardless of whether you're talking about church, like if you hang around nothing but like right-wing people all the time, like there are people who are going to be completely repulsed by that and they'll just kind of withdraw into their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people like are going to see like, oh, well, these people, I don't agree with them on this and that, but they're good people and I do like them and I enjoy their company, and slowly kind of like they'll find themselves drifting more in that direction than they would if they had no proximity to those people whatsoever. And I think within the church, it's like that, but turned up pretty heavily because there's a lot of pressure to adopt principles and ideas and core beliefs, that sort of fade away when you're not there all the time.
Yeah. So, but what you're saying is you think that in the context of church has been a good thing in your life or sort of a thing that you've been fighting against?
I think for me, it was both, but like the kind of stuff that comes to mind with it is like it was only after I had kind of like removed myself from that community that I was able to go, okay, do I really think that God flooded the entire planet and all the animals got on a boat? That's the
Yeah.
actual history of the world as we know it today. Do I actually think that? Because there was a lot of pressure to, like, within my church, there was a lot of pressure to like, you read the Bible, you interpret it literally, and that is literally what God means. The earth's 6,000 years old, the whole earth flooded, 2 of every animal fit on a tiny boat, and that's what's the actual history of the planet is. And
Right.
I wanted to think that was true, and I felt pressure to believe that and to profess that. But after I wasn't like there all the time and feeling that pressure directly, it gave me more room to be like, I don't think I really believe this at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not an important thing really, but like there's a lot of other things that kind of that have a lot more weight and you know, they're a lot more pertinent to like your daily life and the way that you look at the people around you that I think faded away too, you know.
Once you
Things like
left.
homophobia, you know, was definitely one of those things. Like I had to get out of there and meet other people and be away from like this consistent message for me to go, it's not right the way that I think about, you know, these people who are just people and they're good people. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of things like that. They're not all bad, but I don't know. It's like the once the community aspect is severed, I feel like a lot of people probably that's the test of your faith, right? Because it's just you. It's
Mm-hmm.
you out in the wilderness and like there's nobody there for you to like protect yourself from the outside world with.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to do some digging. Yeah, absolutely.
I think what's interesting, like I feel like my experience is a good bit different. The irony being that like I never my mind shift and my thinking about things differently happened within the context of within the full context of church, being part of it, being active in it, being involved, and then just hearing things and being like, oh, I don't think I'm not there anymore. I don't think that or just having questions that I didn't feel like were being answered and reading about them, finding a new perspective or finding a different perspective, authors with different perspectives to get an idea of maybe the way other people might look at this. And it, actually, what's funny is that Liberty University was kind of where things did start shifting for me when I took a Daniel Revelation class. Joked on that a little bit here, because quite silly, but that was where I was. They
All
they
right.
tried to set it up in a way that's just like there are these other ideas about what about end time stuff, right? And to me, that was low stakes, right? You're not talking about the deity of Christ or the resurrection. You're talking about a heavy ass speculation on whether or not how the world is going to be destroyed. So you're like,
Yeah.
whatever. It felt like more like low stakes, where you're like, I can think maybe differently than the mainstream without this being a mainstream evangelical Christianity,
Yeah.
without this being a problem. So you read these books. It's like 4 views on this, and then you get these different perspectives, and then I read a couple of things on like the dating of Revelation and when it was authored, and the evangelical narrative. I'm like, this sounds so forced. Like it was like that became like an Occam's razor kind of. It's like maybe the simplest answer is the right one here. Like if it's very simple that it was probably like if you can simply explain why it was probably written in this time period or this decade, versus jumping through mad hoops and writing 15 chapters on why it wasn't. It felt like really a lot easier to be like, well, maybe I just can think differently about this. So that was ironically the catalyst for me, was being like that got me interested in thinking about things differently, that I made me feel like, oh, I could take a different perspective. And
Was
that I ended up feeling slightly more and more bold in the different types of perspectives I could take within whatever scenario I was in. But
was it John that wrote Revelation?
John, someone who went by the name of John.
Maybe,
There's lots of Johns.
getting your feet boiled in oil scrambles your eggs a little bit. Maybe that's where
Yeah.
Revelation came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite the story.
What I mean, what was that like for you? What led you? Because you said you don't identify as a Christian anymore. Like, how
Sure.
did that come about?
Oh man, that is a big question. Well, I think I had a similar journey to what you guys just explained, of sort of having these bigger questions more and more in my late teens, early 20s. Um, a lot around social issues, right? About certain groups and all that stuff, and a lot of it around just the idea of eternity and hell and stuff like that, and just kind of that same feeling of like, I'm not there anymore. I don't think I believe that. But like still being at church and sort of singing songs on stage, but like in the back of your mind, you're just like, I don't know. Something feels off here. Not just culturally, but sort of existentially. So yeah, I started having, I think, those questions. I graduated high school and I didn't go to college, but I started leading worship at a church, like a church plant. And that was what I thought I needed to be doing in life. Pumped on it. I was like 18 or 19. I was so young. and it ended up not being so great. Like sort of the whole situation, it was just like a struggling church plant, just not emotionally supportive for like a kid who's just like trying to figure out what to do in life, not to blame the church, but was just learning a lot of just like things out of that, and started traveling more and started just thinking more about critically about what I believed, and sort of being out of that church context definitely helped that too. So I think I agree with or resonate with both of your stories. But it wasn't this like sever that like something happened, like pastor betrayed this person, or I saw this happen and my family got excommunicated. It was none of that. It was this sort of slow burn of like, okay, like I'm not sure I'm there anymore. And then hearing other people go through that, but in very sort of secret ways, or through music, like hearing, Pedro the Lion, and hearing all these guys that are singing about it, and sort of connecting and being like, wow, like I really feel this stuff. Like I really feel myself in this, and getting more into that stuff. And, this is early 20s, sort of having that moment where I'm like, I'm not going to go to church anymore. I'm going to just take some time and figure out what I believe and get away. And sort of the identity crushing thing that happens when you decide to sort of take that big of a, it doesn't sound like that crazy for a lot of people, like, oh, you left church, like whatever. But if someone who's like led worship or like been in a church, when you get out of it, it could be like, there's like a withdrawal from that whole community, or just a sense of self that is like pretty jarring. It feels a little funky. So spent some years in that sort of fog and headspace, and I think I'm still in some version of that, but a lot healthier and a lot better, thankfully, due to like therapy and friends and conversations like this, and with people talking about their past and talking about how the weird stuff was weird, but also how like some of the good stuff was good. And that's been the hardest part for me. Yeah. Is figuring out like, whoa, like there's some stuff in here that like is part of who I am and part of the way I see love and life and patience and all these things that I consider good things about myself were acquired through my faith or my relationship with my mom, and that sort of faith relationship. And how do I make sense of this where it's not even throwing the baby out with the bathwater? It's like, I can't throw myself out. Like there are parts of myself that are ingrained in this, but a lot of it, most of it, I don't mess with anymore. Like I don't believe in, I don't resonate with. But some of it I still do, and those little parts are very core. So it's just about how do you navigate that, and how do you not feel like you're broken when that is the case, where you're not feeling like half of yourself is in one door, half of yourself is in the other. And I think for a while I saw myself as like lost, right? I was like, well, I'm just lost. Like, I don't know, but I'm definitely not in that place now. And thankfully, due to like good conversations, relationship therapy, supporting wife, and so many things. But yeah, it's been a journey to get here, and I still feel like I'm trucking on and figuring out what that means and what that looks like to feel whole in that sense. But I think it's a journey worth going on, rather than being like, well, I need to sort of scurry back into a corner, because we all know like that feels great. Like it's great to have that security net of like, all right, here are my sets of beliefs. It's here, it's black and white. It's what it's written on the wall. It's what all these 10,000 people are doing. Must be good, right? Where it's like, no, it's I don't want to fall back into that, So yeah.
Yeah, dude, I think what you're saying, especially about, you mentioned not wanting to, it's not about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but how much of who you are is because of what we were raised in. I think this is what I'm kind of extrapolating from some of what you're saying, is that like, and this is maybe I'm projecting to, maybe you can tell me, but like
Deal.
so much of Christianity is tied up in just believing the right things, right? You need to believe X, Y, and Z, and that's what's going to send you to heaven. That's what's going to save you in the end times. That's what's going to get you sucked up into heaven, to heaven's gates at the rapture. Like it's that rightness of belief, and we know that and we make this assumption that because of our rightness of belief, we're going to do the things that God wants us to do. We're going to take care of the people who need to be taken care of. We're going to have those virtuous things that end up becoming part of us, looking at things in a way where like, well, maybe loving the unlovable, or trying to be patient, or whatever. Like those types of things get instilled, but we are taught that we're only going to successfully accomplish these things if we believe the right things about who God is, or who Christ is. And I think what becomes so weird is when you realize that you start losing those beliefs, but but some of those values maintain despite them, and you start to feel like, I guess I'll connect this back to what you're talking about, is that struggle of feeling like even when you're beyond believing some of these things, that struggle when you sink back into those times of you're on the right path or the wrong path or whatever. And I want to maybe in a little bit get into maybe some of what I feel like that comes through in your music, oh my God, I keep forgetting. We talked about it before we started recording. The name of your album, the most recent one,
Everyone I've Ever Loved.
Yes, I feel like that struggle comes through in it of like that path, or like I feel like I'm on the wrong one, but I definitely don't feel like but maybe I'm okay with that, and I'll just be okay with being wrong then. But then so I feel like maybe I want to hear about that journey for you, because I feel like maybe you were transitioning to where you're at now when maybe you wrote some of that, but it just feels like you can keep some of that good stuff. You can keep a lot. I kept a lot of it, despite, and I'm still more, I still kind of plant myself in Christianity, I guess, but that comes with a lot of baggage and asterisks. But either way, but for me, it's like, it's all regardless of belief. It's like my belief at this point has become like in these good things, in this way of life. And that like, it kind of inversed, right? Like, so growing up Christianity, you'll only do the right things because of Jesus. But now it's like, I just want to do, I feel like if there's anything in this world, anything that matters, anything that has meaning, I'll prescribe this meaning to it if that's how I give it that meaning. But that's the way that I want to live. I'll live that life. And
it's a big middle finger to Paul. Faith without works is dead. No, it's not, buddy.
Yeah. Faith, is that Paul or James was? No, was that
Paul or was that James?
It might have been James. You've been out for too long, man.
I've been out for too long. Wow, I feel like I gotta Google it now. Faith, that is James, right?
But the irony of that is like you had people who wanted to get rid of that book. Who was it? Martin Luther? One of the Jesus Christ. One of the reformers or something was like wanted to get rid of that, didn't think that book should have been in the Bible, because the idea that your beliefs are like, it's kind of like who gives a fuck what you believe? Show me what you do, and then I'll know what you believe. I know it goes both ways. It's weird. I was more making a joke to like sort of turn it on its head, but I completely agree with what you're saying. But anyway, yeah. So the whole like struggle, but of right and wrong, and wondering if, like, for the longest time I was like, I'm believing the wrong things, therefore I might go to hell, even though my life didn't change at all and I was still actively involved in the world I was involved in. It's like, am I really is it all about this like assent to some theological proposition? That's it, that's how we've boiled this down to. And then when I would really feel like I connected with my faith, it never had anything to do with it. And trying to make those two compete got old for me. No, for sure. It can get tiring. Yeah.
What, so if you're unmoored from Christianity, like, do you, like, does spirituality, like, play any role in your life? Did you find another belief system that worked better for you? Or do you kind of just take it as it comes and not really think as closely about some of the bigger principles of it?
Oh, no, I think more closely, than I've ever have before.
That sounded really condescending. That's
no.
Not the way that I was.
No, you're fine. I understand the question, but but it's a good question, right? Where it's like, well, if you don't resonate with this, but no, I think deeply, still very spiritual, deeply, I think just more open and more humble to the fact that maybe we're all wrong. Maybe someone is right. I don't know. I don't have the authority, or I have the right to have the faith, and everyone has the right to have the faith of, I think this is it, but a lot more open to just how different people find faith, and even within Christianity, because I think I grew up in such a way of, all right, you're Assemblies of God, Christian, even Catholics, even they're on the edge, dude. I don't know about those guys. Like, it was even this like outside of my own culture, not sure, and I think that played a big role in what I really started turning me off. Is just this like, us, them. So now I try to I'm still, again, still learning how to build those values of what I loved and learned as a child and as a, teenager, and through my life still of sort of God reaching out. But I don't see it in like the traditional church Christian sense that I grew up in. But I think that it's beautiful that there are churches all over the world that celebrate God differently, that don't have maybe fog machines and flashing lights, like sort of the contemporary version of Christianity is in America. There's just different ways to see it. That's where I'm at, and I think I'm still tuning in to find what that means for me personally. But I think we all are in some way, and I think once you think you've landed, I don't know, that's where I think I have a hard time. Like, okay, cool, like I'll never truly land, but there are ways that I think building values are important. So there's this sort of balance of like, yes, build your values, but there isn't as like, yep, I'm this now, and I don't know. I kind of try to have that openness about most things in life and get tripped up most of the time. But
does the larger institution of, organized religion, like, do you just kind of, do you feel like repulsed by it, or do you really not have that sort of angst against it, or where did it leave you on that?
Not anymore. I think, well, I should say for certain institutions I do, and those are the ones that take advantage of vulnerable people and marginalized communities, and that's actually something very close to my heart, where my mom and I grew up. My parents were divorced, and my mom and I kind of grew up together, and I see my dad a whole bunch. But there was the televangelists, your Creflo Dollars, and
Yeah.
Kenneth Copeland's, and I grew up on that stuff and saw my mom fooled into that pretty heavily. And so there is a fire in my heart reserved for institutions like that has not gone out to this day. And I still have a lot of sort of anger and angst built up towards that, of course, just because I can't see people get like that sort of level of scamming, like really bothers and hurts me just because of the personal connection. But in general, I think anyone with the right mind would feel that way. So yes, in that sense, but no, in the sense of, church, as people would go to church, there's no sort of judgment. And I think there might've been for a while, like, nah, dude, like I'm out, like I got out. And there was this, almost, I sort of needed to distance it and like not associate at all, or like think it was bad to feel good about myself. But I feel like I've realized you can only be in that place of anger, which is an important place to be, but it's not a good place to be forever. I do believe you have to walk through that part of the puzzle, right? But to stay there, it's not a great thing. So I still find myself, again, at times seeing stuff and feeling angry, but I try to be very careful of like managing that, because it's almost sadness now. Like that anger a lot of it is transferred to like, wow, like those people are so like in it that they really don't see a lot of this stuff. And not that I know or that I see outside, but like when people are obviously getting manipulated, there is something to be said of like, wow, like that's a weird situation. I'm not saying I'm better, but I'm saying that like I need help. So there is, I think it's a mixed answer, but in terms of just like people who go to church or like F the church, like I try not to feel that way or hold on to that. I still do have a healthy amount of calling out bullshit I see in the church, just because so many years I sort of was like, or felt, part of it. So I think it's important to still call that out where I see it, but I don't try to spend my time thinking about it or ruminating on pastors being fake or this or that. Cause it's like, well, I'm going to just do my part to be the counter to that, not to just be a critic to that. Like, what am I doing to sort of offset that? Like, how am I offering people sort of a good story or good hope? So I try not to focus too much on that, but definitely have been in places like that and still find myself.
It's like you got to walk through that desert, but it's not a good place to pitch your tent.
Something like that. Yeah. Footprints in sand.
Tell that to the Israelites who were in that desert for 40 years, Casey.
What's that?
I said, tell that to the Israelites who were in that desert for 40 years. That's messed up, man.
Oh, I think I know a few of those on Instagram.
They didn't. The Airbnbs they had, right? They didn't have tents.
Okay, so if it's not a subject that you want to talk about, totally understand. But we talk to a lot of people who, like, one of their final experiences with Christianity and church in any sort of formal setting was a church plant. And it seems like It seems like that's a common thread, and we recently had a discussion with a couple that are also musicians, and they talked a lot about their experience helping to start this church in Boston, and it seems like church plant stuff is like just these cataclysmic like up and downs. It's like the peaks of meaning and ecstasy and stuff like that in building it, followed by like the pits of despair in like the demands of what's required for people who are trying to get something like that off the ground, and the difficulty in working that closely with people who may or may not have the experience necessary to like wrangle an organization like that they're trying to put together. Like what was that experience like for you?
Oh man, yeah, I think there's a lot to that. It's funny you said church plant in Boston. That is because the one I was at was.
Ooh, well, exchange details.
Yes,
after
hours.
Anyone on blast necessarily here, but I'm
growing up Christian after hours. Yeah, no, I think there's a connection to what we talked about with the school teachers, about these people with maybe good hearts who are just showing up to serve, right? But there being a level of, there might be a disqualification for certain roles there, and a lack of maybe education or experience. But because it's in a church setting, it like sort of nullifies that. And it's like, oh, your heart's there. So like, let's get you involved, and like, let's put all this responsibility and pressure and all this stuff on. And I definitely felt that as like a 19-year-old kid that was like so underqualified to be a worship pastor at a church plant. And, at the time I was doing it with a girl I was dating, we were doing it together. It was a mess, and it was not it's like not their fault. No one put a gun to my head to do it. But I think there was this delusion of like, I'm here to change the world, which could have happened if I didn't do it. Like there was a sense of this is God's path. This is the plan. This is it. And there was this like responsibility I felt to like do that. And I think that, I don't know if that completely answers the question, but I think there's a relationship to that in sort of burning out and realizing, feeling like I didn't have what it takes, or what is wrong with me, or this or that, where it's just like, you're just trying to build a church, like with little money, and the fundraising culture is a whole other thing. And like, it's intense. It's like, it's crazy stuff. And it's stuff that I don't miss and don't recommend. And I don't know, it can get really funky.
I think the conflicting feelings that situations like that bring upon people is like, when you get into a church plant, you're doing it because you're like, we got to bring the gospel to this area. And God obviously wants his gospel brought areas. And you're met with this, like, of course it's hard work and it's not great and it's difficult, but there's this feeling that like it should take off differently or feel differently. Like if God wants this to happen, shouldn't this be going maybe a little bit smoother? Shouldn't maybe less people be leaving? So then when you want to leave, you're met with like, I'm giving up on God, but like, you're also feeling like, shouldn't God be doing some of this too? Like, shouldn't this be doing better, or bringing in more people if this is what God actually wants? I don't know. It's maybe that hits you a little bit more when you're stuck in that mode of like, whether or not everything's predetermined or your works make a difference. But I just remember feeling like I used to go around areas of Boston just hoping to be able to like meet people and somehow maybe end up bringing them into church, or even if it wasn't church, like getting in a conversation with a stranger about and leading him to the Lord. It's like that. It's so weird to think about. I feel like I might have never even brought that up, but I just it feels so strange to think about, because I think in some sense that was always about me. But in a church setting, I'm like, I always it felt like maybe it shouldn't be so grueling to get this to where it should be if this is what God wants. But then giving up is like going against God's plan. It makes everything so convoluted and confusing, and created a lot of fog at that point.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm going to throw a wrench in that because I'm curious to hear what you think about this theory. But I also think the inverse is true, where a lot of times people are able to justify unhealthy systems and behaviors by pointing to the fact that, oh, our church is growing.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's an interesting
100%.
It's an interesting paradox. I also agree with what you're saying, but it is funny to see like other churches that like are obviously like manipulating people or hurting people, or I mean, there's the whole like Mars Hill stuff. Like I don't know how much you guys followed up with that, but there was a lot there of like, oh, let's point to the numbers and say, okay, like we're on track. Like God's working. People are growing. Like the church is growing. Until it implodes on itself or explodes on itself, right? Maybe one is imploding, one is exploding, where you realize that you were just riding the wave of sort of success in recruitment, right? And I think the idea of recruitment has really been on my mind and heart. Like this past couple months, I've been talking to friends about it. Just that sense of, as a kid, like you said, walking around, looking at people pass by and having this nature of I am a recruiter, like I'm here to save them. I'm here to bring, and in your head, it's like to bring them to know Christ, to know freedom, to know the gospel so that their chains are broken. And I'm not saying that that's not true, that you didn't believe that earnestly, but there's a sense of that is a crazy thing to just think that you were trying to recruit people, or I can speak for myself. Like I was always seeing the world through a lens of it's my people and like the world. And it's time. And I think that created a really unhealthy perspective on the world, and one that I definitely do not hold anymore by any means, and actively work to like never fall into that headspace, because I feel like that's where you get into trouble with understanding people, because I think everyone has the opportunity, right, to say, oh, I'm on the right side of the lens here, whether it's Muhammad that was born in Morocco, or Frank in Germany, or Paolo in Brazil, or Kevin in Boston. Like we all have our worldview, and our way to say, well, the way I grew up is this. So the humility and just the openness to be like, well, let me not put, this isn't a me-centric world. It was like when people didn't want to accept that, the sun wasn't the center of the universe. They thought the earth was the center of the universe. Years of scientific battle for people to be, no, guys, like we're literally the third planet in. We're not the center. It's kind of the same thing. You're like, wait, no, but it makes sense that like my story, my movie in my head, like I'm the main character, but then you realize like everyone else is the main character too. Just try to be kind and gentle to other people and understand their perspective.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. It's funny. I'll be really self-deprecating here, I guess, because where we were in like, when I talk about going around trying to hopefully find myself in conversations where I could lead someone to the Lord or invite him to church or whatever. Of course, the only places I was walking around were like, low income areas, right? Low income housing, what you might call the projects. I don't know if that's the right term anymore, but where you never would have found me? You never would have found me walking around the mansions in Brookline, hoping to talk to someone who maybe could have, like, there was so much of like that, like, you want to report back and like, look, I was there, I was down in this area with these people, and it's so shitty. Like, I hate that so much about like,
is that also like a sense of because like I'm in sales, and like when you're making cold calls, the perceived importance of a person, or like how well they have themselves and their organization together, directly correlates with like how much anxiety you have about going to talk to them.
Yes. Yeah.
So like walking
the more anxiety, the higher rank the person you're talking to.
Yeah, like I work with car dealerships, and like going to talk to the owner of the car dealership produces a different level of anxiety than like going to talk to the technicians in the back shop or the service manager or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think probably some of that's just like the justification for it is, I'm going to the least of these, forgetting entirely that Jesus just shit on the rich.
Well, that's where you got to give your boy Carl Lentz props, because he went to the most of these.
Yeah.
He went to Justin Bieber. He went to the Kardashians. He swung for the fence, that guy.
Hey,
swung for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You go big or go home, and he eventually had to go home.
He went big, all right.
Yeah, he went
big, all right. Oh yeah, went out with a couple bangs, I heard.
What's his next grift? Has he announced yet? I mean, do we have a clear idea where he's going? Is he selling like gold bullion on Rudy Giuliani's radio station, or what's his next huckst?
Man, I think they should just have one big uncanceled tour. where it's everyone who was canceled just getting together.
This is a great idea.
Dude, it's just
It's the worst idea.
No,
The worst.
like
Mark
Carl
Driscoll,
Lentz,
Carl Lentz,
and
yeah.
Milo Yiannopoulos and Alex Jones like dancing a can.
God. No.
I can see, but and it ends with them with their tour bus just driving off of a cliff, and then they go out with their last tour. I think that's fine.
Yeah. All right. We'll figure that one out. We'll work on it.
Yeah, you got tour booking people. You know people.
Yeah.
Let's make this happen.
Yeah.
Dude, so
but
I want to talk about. Well, I do want to talk about your music, and I know you got some stuff coming out. I know I was telling you at the top here before we started recording. Everyone I Ever Loved. I was driving home from North Carolina on my vacation a few weeks ago, and I listened to it like I said, like 4 times back to back, and just really like kind of soaking it in, and because I loved it. I like, the first time I'm listening to it, my kids are I also probably had to listen to it a bunch of times because I'm in a 12, 13 hour drive with my kids in the back seat.
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot it's hard to pay attention to anything. But it's like, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we talk about or we have talked about comes through in that. And that album came out in 2018. So you probably, a lot of what you were writing was leading up to that. Was that kind of during your, was that when you were kind of struggling through a lot of this and on your way out of what you would have considered like a traditional Christian world?
Absolutely. Yeah. That album specifically was a big part of processing all these topics. And it was written, came out in 2018, but it was recorded in 2018, but written, sort of 3, 4, 5 years before that, all the songs sort of gathering up. And it was sort of just everything we're talking about here and more, just all those concepts of just rediscovering your identity and your relationship to faith and to family and to community and to friendships that have grown up through faith. I mean, that's another thing. Going to youth group, like I said, a lot of my core friends from church and like seeing their faith change and like that dynamic. And it's still trippy to me. Like there's some friends I have that are, they're like in the church, they're pastoring churches, and I'm just so far away from that world. It's crazy how things can change. So navigating that through the lens of friendships and what that means for your friendships and grieving and losing friendships. There's just a lot on that album that was just written about regarding sort of re-understanding faith and leaving the church, obviously. But what's funny, like now the big thing is like deconstruction, right? Where everyone's talking about it, and that's cool. But it wasn't even like, I'm deconstructing, like time to write a deconstruction album. It was just, it wasn't anything like that. And I think it was just what I was going through at the time, and really the stuff that was deep in my heart, and sort of the things that I was processing the most. And, it seemed to now be like a record that really helps people in that space to sort of understand and to talk about things, which is so great. But it's always interesting to look back on it to be like, I didn't intend it to be this like banner or anything like that for like the people who like leave the church. It was just what I was going through. And it's just always interesting to see how people sort of perceive that art and put it to their own story and their own. But it seems like it's helped a lot of people, which is really cool and like makes me really glad. Yeah,
dude, absolutely. I think you mentioning that it was written over obviously a period of time. I think you can almost see that like it's almost like a conversation. Like when you look at some of the back and forth in it, it's like you seem like you're more over here, maybe in one song, and more over here. And I don't know, man. I really pieced together well, and that's what made me want to re-listen to it so many times in a row.
That's so cool. That's cool. I love that.
And hear and like, questions around, like I said earlier, like some of it definitely comes down to that whole like 2 paths. Am I on the right path? Am I on the wrong path? And I think, and one of the songs, you said something about, maybe I'll just be content existing outside of your love. And it's like, I think to me, like I thought what resonated with me about that concept is I feel like that kind of encapsulates something that people who are having a shift in faith, whether or not they stay Christian or not, but having a shift from the faith that they were born into is something that they go through where it's like the dissonance is like, you're so, the idea that what you were born into is correct is so wrapped up in your psychology and who you are that the idea of doing anything different can't be anything but wrong. But you're so much outside of what you came up in that you have to just be okay with being wrong. And I feel like that's the first step that people take in a lot of ways. And I think that a lot of what that album, what you say on it, like hits to that experience.
Yeah, that is a great point. What always gets me though, and I'm always confused by this because it's what you said. It's like it's the main character syndrome, right? It's like, well, how is the thing that I was born into not the thing? Like it has to be like this is my life, like this is my perspective. But it always gets me people who sort of find God at like 29, right, or like 30.
Yes, dude.
You know, and it's like
many times for us.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I'm always, and I don't have the answer, and I have thoughts, I have opinions, and I'm, I'm just like, well, how do I? Is it a trick of the light? Is it emotional response? Is it like someone just super vulnerable? Is it God? Is it what is that? Because that person, sometimes I've seen people sort of living a life alcoholic, like down a certain path, and like overnight their life has changed and their complete worldview and sense of self and reliance on everything is just completely shifted. And that is funky and definitely still very interesting, and like see that play out in some people's life. When I was younger in the church, I saw it and I was like, what is that? At the time, you're just like, oh, it's the power of God. And not that I'm saying it's not. I'm just saying I'm open to what is the psychology behind that, right? Like what is happening that puts in your logic? I'm really curious.
Yeah, dude. I mean, my grandfather. So my uncle. It's funny. One of my uncles I talk to a good bit, just like messaging, right? And he's my uncle's age is like in between me and my dad. Like he was born, like my dad was like 18 or 19 when he moved out of the house. And then, I mean, he's 18 or not. I think he's like 18 or 19 years older than my uncle. So like my uncle was basically a kid when my dad out. And so he's kind of like bridges it, right? He's like the middle ground. And my grandfather was an alcoholic, and he was a really shitty dad in a lot of ways to the older kids. And then but he had his like conversion experience. He got saved and he quit drinking, and anyone who knew him after that would be like kindest, gentlest, most loving. Like he just saw you, right? Like I remember being in high school talking about being in a metal band, and like he didn't know anything about it. Like, but he would just look at you with these eyes of like, this is the most important thing in the world to me. And my uncle messaged me recently talking about how like that's how people knew him, is like he just loved you and cared about you, heard and saw you. And it made me think of that experience again. And I'm like, that it's for my grandfather, that being that was directly tied to his. So I'm with you, man. Like I don't know what to make of that stuff, especially when you see some people have a conversion experience and become really shitty. I've definitely seen that before, but
right.
I think happens, a lot of that comes down to just like some people need structure so badly, like, and not in a bad way, like, oh, you're just too dumb to make it on your own, but like some people, I feel like they're not happy with where they are and they know they need to make a change. And like this community offers a structure that seems to really work for some people. If you depending on what your goals are, but it does seem to work really well for certain people. And like, I don't know, have you guys ever had somebody close to you that like sold Amway?
No.
It's not a good it's like a condescending comparison for sure. But like part of like jumping into something like Amway or something is like, it's not the sort of thing that you're like, well, I guess I'll try it and see if I can sell some stuff or whatever. Like you have to buy into the system, and the system has to become like, I have a job, but this is how I'm going to get ahead. Like, this is how I'm going to establish myself and get ahead in life. And it's more than just like a side business. Like, this is going to be how I get to the next level. And I think that's kind of how people approach a lot of things. And, with Christianity, especially, I was just having a conversation about a guy like this today who, was kind of a partier and stuff like that in his younger days, long before I knew him. And now he's very devout and very kind of annoying about it to the point where like he gets angry that like coworkers are drinking at a dinner or a company outing or something like that, but like he needs that structure so bad. And when that structure did work for him, he became so loyal to it that like the structure is now kind of more important than like reaching the people on the other side of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's a
think that
good.
is the case for plenty of people. I mean, I think you see that. I think that's tried and true. Really, I think you see it. I think the outliers are where I find myself being fascinated. I honestly believe my grandfather was an outlier because I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think he founded a church and you know all that kind of stuff, but AA definitely was a catalyst for it. So I mean, shout out to AA, right? Like that.
AA is one of those things.
That is a structure that does work, and that having that really is beneficial. But
Yeah.
that wasn't something my grandfather even stuck with. Like he didn't stay in AA. He didn't like I there's just, like it was just something flipped in him. From my understanding, and the person that I knew was different than like the person that my dad or his siblings grew up with. Like there was an actual I feel like there was an actual change as much as I could understand it. Outside of like boxing into these structures or then wanting everyone else to or feeling uncomfortable if other people didn't. Like it was just like
Yeah.
you do
You know.
but
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this is who I am now. Like it feels like there was a change there, and I think that's those are the ones that do boggle my mind, and they are certainly.
But it's interesting. So to that point of structure, I'm thinking about this, and I think we're thinking about it in terms of AA meetings or church or community group or Sunday mornings. But I think if you zoom that out and look at the macro, subscribing to faith is sort of cosmic structure, right? It's someone who's felt lost otherwise and saying all of a sudden, like, not in like even your community, but in your existence, you have a place. Like you have a place in the jar of that. Like there is now an identity and there's someone above you and there's in some ways maybe even unhealthy people below you. There's like a sense of structure in your sense of self, which I think explains a lot of people who feel lost or broken or vulnerable, like the psychology behind giving them faith. For better or for worse, I think we all need that. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but it's just faith is one of those things. Religion is one of those things, for better or for worse, that gives you that cosmic structure of yourself and yours, right? And I think that's
Sure.
why there's a lot of magic or just like radical change that happen because you're just looking at someone who's just been completely unhinged, alcoholic sometimes, and all of a sudden they're it's night and day, like their lives have changed. And I think a lot of that has to do with structure. I think it's a great point. But even if you zoom it out, like to the sense of self, not just to like, oh, I have people to like see every Sunday now, or like sort of a week structure, but like a life structure.
Yeah, it like reframes your
Yeah.
existence in a lot of ways.
And I don't think that need cheapens it in any
No.
sort of
No.
way or makes it. I don't think that it's a bad thing. Like, and if we're being honest, all of us benefit from structure, regardless
Oh,
of what part of your life you're talking about. Like, just just look at your job. Like, if you're miserable at your job, and we all go through points where we feel that way, like, okay, well, what time are you going to bed at night? And what time are you getting up in the morning? And like
yeah.
you're going to work, but are you getting some exercise? Are you getting outside? All of a sudden you go from like just being in disarray to like I'm in bed at 11, I'm up at 5, I do 30 minutes on the treadmill and then I go to work. I'm getting sleep, like all of that stuff, even though that's like a more concrete version of what we're talking, like all of that not only helps you do better at your job and not hate it so much, but like it just makes your life better in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And I think like there's something to be said for, okay, like you've decided that evangelicalism or Christianity or whatever it is that you grew up in is not the structure for you. Like, I don't think you want to spend too much time totally adrift. Like, you need to find some foundational principles that you can plant your flag in.
Yeah,
And you hear a lot of that
definitely.
from people who are into Buddhism. Like, Buddhism is a really good framework with which to look at your life. Like secular Buddhism or whatever you want to, whichever version of it you want to talk about. That seems to work well for a lot of people who want some degree of spirituality in their life, but like Christianity just doesn't work for them anymore.
That's interesting. I don't know if I fully agree with that. And I'm going to think on that one because I almost am in the place that I think the universe is structureless. but I still believe that structures are important. So there's this it's almost paradoxical, and your point makes more sense than mine will probably make sense. But I feel like we're living in a paradox that things are just so crazy that we need that structure to distract us from the unstructured chaos that is universe.
It's probably true.
It could be a distraction.
It's probably
I also
true.
think,
But I don't know. That's the thing too, where it's That's what I think. But I still see the benefits of everything you're saying. I completely agree. When I feel the worst in my life, it's when things are a mess. I don't feel like I'm sleeping well. Things are unstructured. There's no rhythm. That is completely true. But I think that's why we're so quick to say, like, oh, we got to land somewhere. We got to figure it out. We got to figure out this faith thing, because in every other sphere, that like structure is important. But I just don't think faith is something we can quantify down to that level of consistency ever. Values, yes, that's where I think I'm still struggling. But it's not even a point I'm making to argue. It's just an interesting.
It is a good one.
Yeah.
Well, and I say all that not really having a structure myself. I just kind of drift back and forth depending on what we're arguing about.
Yeah, I think an interesting caveat to all that, kind of, I guess it somewhat bridges the gap a bit. Not that I like to be middle road fucking guy. That guy gets annoying after a while. But Rob Bell, I remember hearing him say at one point, like, that when it comes to like a sort of spiritual growth, right? There's this spiritual, not religious sense, and that's of course fine. But there are, when you look at when you can set something up as kind of a guidepost, right? Like, you're going to have almost become a more, I don't necessarily like the terminology I'm about to use, but a more spiritually mature person. Like, if you're just adrift, you're like, I don't know that I necessarily believe in anything, but everything's great. Love is love and blah, blah, blah. Like, those people kind of just are flaky often. But when you look at the people who provide real value in their teaching, with their guidance, they're coming from a perspective. What they're not doing is making their perspective monolith. They're not saying this is the only way, but they're extrapolating something that's useful for everyone and themselves from a particular person. So you could pick Jesus, right? You can pick Jesus, and you can use that as your post, your signpost, your whatever. And you could also pick something else. So Buddhists, that has the tradition that it's wrapped up in, and it can extrapolate from thousands of years of other people's thinking within that. And I like that idea. And I think that even when you're talking about structure, Casey, that's why I'm not resistant to that. I don't think the idea of structure or a framework or a scaffolding makes people weak. I think everybody picks it. The people who don't are flaky and floaty, and they're kind of adrift in a lot of ways. But like, for me, like, I'm not going to make any real truth claims. I'm not going to say this is the way, but I won't really, but for me, it makes sense to stick within something. So like my framework has always been Christian. And while my beliefs have changed in a lot of ways that pull me far outside any sort of traditional Christian faith, in that it definitely puts me as an adversary to some of those in those traditions, I find that works for me, and having that structure and that scaffolding allows me to, in the circumstances that I'm in personally, be like, look, this is the kind of person I want to be based on the way they understand Jesus. And I don't know if there's anything out there outside of this universe, inside of this universe, anything that provides meaning or not. But I know that when I feel things are meaningful, and I find meaning in this crazy fucked up place, it's through that lens. And outside of that lens, I lose that. And it doesn't mean it's right, wrong, true, or false. It just means that that's how I'm going to get through this, and how I'm going to get through it in a way that I think, when I live this way or when I act this way, it makes the world a better place based on a collective agreement, right? We can collectively agree societally, globally, universally, that like, there are ways to live that make the world a better place, and ways to live and in order to live into that in a way that I think is important or helpful or provides meaning, it's through that lens and through that. And so that's why it works for me. But so I think that structure, I'll never find that to be an offensive thing. Like, I'll pick it. I'll pick this one. This is my structure. And you can pick that structure and be really fucking shitty. We are seeing it constantly. And that's why people are leaving it in droves, the Christian one. But like, It doesn't mean you
Interesting.
can't make it work for you. It doesn't mean you
Yeah.
have to make it work for you, and it certainly doesn't make it ultimate reality.
Yeah, it's almost like a language, right? It's just communication.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you could know a language and have a great vocabulary or shitty vocabulary. You can know a language and say, wow, there are hundreds of other languages that can communicate the same thing, just in different ways. But to not ever learn any specific language sort of inhibits your expression, maybe. I'm just trying to understand it through that lens. That's really interesting.
I like the way you just boiled.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
To not learn a language simply because it's all just metaphor for things and concepts would be insane.
Yeah.
Like, learn a language.
There's a practicality.
And the more you know, the better. In some ways, but
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, that's really, I love that challenge. That's a really interesting point. Yeah.
And for you
Well,
folks
guys, I have to wrap up in a little bit here. No, it's been great. I'm just giving you a heads up. But we could probably go on forever.
We could. No, this is about our time. It's funny because I was like, to close us out, let's talk about some music, and we've been doing this for 20 minutes.
No, I love it. I love all the conversations.
Well, let's really close us out, and you can talk. You guys have 2 new singles out. I don't know. Do you have a release date for your new album?
We do. June 3rd. It's coming up.
Oh, nice.
June 3rd. So just in a bit, we're going to put out the full record. It's called Heal My Head. And yeah, 2 singles are out right now. There'll be a third probably by the time this airs, where the full album will be out. So we're really excited. Yeah, it's a continuation to the story. So
nice. I can't wait to hear it. The 2 singles that are out now are fantastic. I've already said enough nice things about your previous album. So everyone really go listen to it. Especially, I think our listeners especially listen to Everyone I've Ever Loved. I got it right this time.
And if people want updates on touring and all of that kind of stuff, new music, all that, what's the best place for them to follow you guys and keep up with that?
Instagram, probably. Yeah, Instagram or Twitter. Yeah.
Which is?
Valleyheart MA for Twitter, and same for Instagram. Valleyheart MA.
Valleyheart MA.
Yeah, Massachusetts.
Even though you're not Massachusetts anymore.
Yeah, well, I can't do, QC or Quebec or wherever I'm at right now. That username was taken.
Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Go follow Valleyheart MA on Twitter and Instagram, and we will catch you next time.